Good morning, Albuquerque, and welcome to another edition of That Saturday Show, brought to you by the Albuquerque Center for Peace and Justice, your voice and your advocates for social justice. I'm Jim Harvey, your host, and we have an exciting and informative show for you today as we talk about war and nuclear weaponry and the evils of both. We'll be sharing with you some important news coming from the Japanese American Citizens League, and we're going to have Tom Dent bring that information to you shortly as he joins us here at the front desk. We'll also be speaking with Ken Myers of the Santa Fe Vets for Peace and Greg Mello of the Los Alamos Study Group. Brennan and Bowman, and spouse Brian are going to be joining us today, and we're going to be spotlighting a black business with a power couple that is just incredible, and they've got some stories to tell us as well. Now, we've got our director, Tom Dent, with us, and Tom, tell us about our music today and share some other important news.
Well, our music group today is called the Red Light Cameras. They're a very well-known local band. They've been doing some regional touring. They're very good, and they're going to do a song called Come On Over at the end of the show. Also, we're very proud to announce the grand reopening again of the Peace Cafe, and that takes place Thursdays from 11 to 3. It's a great gathering. Everybody in the area, students, professors, people out the streets, people that live nearby, if you want to come down, it's really good home-cooked food, it's donated food, it's music, it's games, it's community, it's conversation, it's a fantastic time. Also, one of our Pajola groups, Peace and Justice groups linking arms, the Japanese American Citizen League is putting on a great show at the Special Collections Library. That's at 423 Central Northeast, and that's going to be this following Saturday at 10:30, and it's called Courage and Compassion, Shared Stories of the Japanese American Experiences in World War II and the internment, unfortunately.
So, keep your eyes on these developing news stories too. Another police murder in Minneapolis. Joe Rogan faces a serious discussion about who should use the N-word, and frankly, in my opinion, no one should. APD and the city attorney are circling the wagons in defense of the slow and ineffective response to the backlog of use of force cases here in Albuquerque. And as prices go up on housing in Albuquerque, isn't it time for rent control? I think it is. Tom, we got about a minute, and I know you've got some feelings about that.
I don't know, I was manning the desk at the Peace Center today, and we got at least 3 phone calls about people who are they've lived in their apartments or houses for like 10 years, and their contracts are being torn up, they're being evicted, their utilities are being cut off, they're asking the Peace Center what we can do to help them. So it's a serious problem across the board, and this, in March, the evictions moratorium runs out, right?
That's right. So I know that actions are being planned. We had a discussion at the Peace Center a couple of days ago, and we started talking about what we can do in order to continue to bring this issue forward. Unfortunately, there's a law I discovered here in New Mexico that prohibits the inaction of rent control programs in any of the cities. We want that law changed, so you'll be hearing more about that in the future. Now, let's get started with some good news. Hassani, what do you got for us?
Thank you, and welcome to Good News News. I'm your correspondent, Hassani Olujimi, and I'm Gugu for Good News. Well, our story today is focused on local Black history, right here in Albuquerque. Let's explore a little more.
It's a quaint church filled with history, dating back hundreds of years ago.
If you look at the migration of African Americans, we migrated from east to west to where more opportunities were.
Since 1882, Grant Chapel AME Church has served as a place of worship.
I believe in the Holy Spirit.
Making it the oldest black church in the entire state of New Mexico.
Usually a forward-thinking vision that they have for the church. And I think that's why this church has been able to survive and thrive even in the midst.
AME, which stands for African Methodist Episcopal, is also the oldest independent African American denomination. It's a religion Pastor Margaret McFadden has been a part of her whole life. She's been a leader at Grant Chapel for over 2 years, serving as the second female pastor ever recorded in the church's history. Pews are typically full of people, but because of COVID-19 and the rising cases of the Omicron variant, the church had to move to a more virtual platform.
It's still hard. I still haven't met all of the people because either they have compromised health situations or I haven't.
Like many others, Pastor McFadden only offers her Sunday services online. However, congregation members are adapting in efforts to continue their faith. Since the 1960s, Frida Maxine Jones has been enriched in the church's culture and history, even helping to preserve it.
They just decided at that time that there needed to be some black history here. And so we started with our youth. Children are our future, and if they don't learn now, they won't know what to do.
It's another legacy the church is leaving behind, spreading their footprint in the entire community. And when it comes to their success, Pastor McFadden says it all comes down to prayer.
We're trying new things. Some of them work, some of them don't. But we keep moving forward knowing that God is with us every step of the way.
Wow, now isn't that good news? All right, Albuquerque, you're putting it on the map. Speaking of church, what kind of car do you think Jesus would drive? Of course, a Chrysler. Tough crowd. Now, let's check in with our favorite sassy grandmother, Lil Big Mama. What do you have in store for us today, lady?
Hi, Hassani. I got a question for your viewers today. What did the boy squirrel say to his girl squirrel? I'm just nuts about you. Now, why did the sheriff arrest her boyfriend? Because he stole her heart. Happy Valentine's Day. Celebrate love. Bye, baby.
Well, as we always say, the best way to turn a frown upside down is to get goo-goo for good news. I'm your correspondent, Hassani Olujimi, and I'll see you right here next time on That Saturday Show with more good news.
Greg Mello is the executive director of the Los Alamos Study Group. Very important functions that are happening here in New Mexico to keep us on our toes when it comes to nuclear disarmament, environmental protection, social justice, and economic sustainability. We're glad to have Greg with us here in the studio today. Greg, welcome to That Saturday Show.
Thank you very much, Jim. I'm very happy to be here.
So tell us more about the Los Alamos Study Group.
Well, some of us got together initially about 33 years ago at the end of the Cold War, and we said, why don't we push hard on these institutions, because they won't move without us, and perhaps now they will start to move. And some of us had been working in interfaith peace activities before then, and I had lived in Livermore, California. I kind of
Los Alamos Labs.
That's right. I had nuclear weapons in family, so to speak, and so I still do. And so at about 30 years ago, I made it a full-time occupation, rented out the house, lived in the office, and I couldn't possibly do all that together. I had been a working environmental scientist and a teacher before then, and so since then I've done a little of everything, But we are, as our ambitious tagline says, we never imagined that nuclear disarmament and peace and social justice and environmental sustainability were at all separate endeavors. And we work some in New Mexico, some nationally, some internationally. I suppose I've given somewhere between 500 and 1,000 briefings on Capitol Hill, and we have long relationships there, which are valuable to us and as friends, as well as some of them are influential. We are proud to have fought back successfully against the construction of nuclear weapons factories in Texas as well as in New Mexico.
Great.
My wife was a mother of 4 living across the road with her wheat farm next to the nuclear weapons plant. And she and her neighbors blocked a huge factory there. And I have realized this story has another meaning these days because it happened very efficiently and very quickly because they were Republicans mostly, I think. And they stood up quickly and firmly and said no. And then they just backed off completely.
Good on them.
Yeah, they were also the Department of Energy was very dumb. They needed the farms of all these people to expand the factory. And so they went to a public meeting, and there was their farm. It was going to be given to the DOE, and so that was a bad PR move by the DOE. But seriously. Under Obama, we were able to litigate and successfully delay and kill the largest nuclear weapons project in the Department of Energy. Now it's back. You can only stun these things, then they come back.
Oh, yeah.
So there is now a plan to build Rocky Flats 2, you might say, at Los Alamos. It's the largest warhead endeavor in the United States since in the Department of Energy since the Cold War. So it's the largest warhead endeavor. Financially, it's much bigger than any project that's ever been done in New Mexico before by some factors. It's about 6 times the size of the Manhattan Project in New Mexico. It's much bigger than the Build Back Better, the infrastructure bill that just passed in its New Mexico component. And unfortunately, and it's very important to understand this, many liberal groups, in fact, most of them, want this factory in New Mexico. New Mexico is considered a lesser evil place to put this. The calculation is that by putting it in New Mexico, that New Mexico is already a nuclear colony. Its people are already poor and subjected to these dangers and this inequity. And it can't get any worse here. And so it is better to have fewer senators who are in favor of this kind of thing. So we'll just put it all in New Mexico. This aligns with Democratic Party desires. So this program here at Los Alamos National Lab wouldn't be here without Senator Udall and Senator Heinrich having recruited other allies in Congress to overcome the professional views of the nuclear weapons establishment itself that Los Alamos would be a terrible place to do this. So this is very much a political move. It aligns with the arms race that's underway with Russia, the sense of inferiority which is creeping fast through our national security establishment with respect to Russia and China. And it's not necessary for any purpose except to enable the production of a new kind of warhead that will keep the nuclear weapons complex nationally busy. One official in the White House remarked to me 3 years ago that this was a terribly expensive way to keep Livermore Lab in high clover.
Wow.
Because they're designing the warhead and they will run out of work to do without this warhead. Los Alamos will be doing the dirty work. Livermore will be the clean lab. We will be doing the production. And so NNSA and the Triad Corporation, which was formed to run Los Alamos, has been scouring the state for willing plutonium minions here at UNM. At the community colleges, they have a program that goes all the way down to kindergarten. And we heard yesterday from sources in Washington that they think they have pretty much drained New Mexico of bodies willing to work there, and they are now going to be expanding their focus more nationally. I can't emphasize enough how important it is to recognize that this is a very specific problem within the larger nuclear weapons and militarism problem. We can't win by being vague about this. We are targeted. We are targeted.
That's right.
And yes, we all face the demonic suction tube that Martin Luther King spoke of so eloquently. Right now, the military-industrial complex takes about $7,400 per household per year from households in the United States. We spend almost $1 trillion a year on trying to maintain an empire. And it's not working, and it has made this country a second or third-rate country.
Absolutely.
And the focus of it here, well, there's many foci, as you know, but the big moving part is that proposed new Rocky Flats plant at Los Alamos. Even from the perspective of, let's say, if you were a budget hawk and a nuclear hawk at the same time, you wouldn't want to build this. Until recently, there was a person in the Pentagon who we knew who said $1 spent at Los Alamos on this project is $1 wasted because Los Alamos is such a crappy place to do this work. That's why it's so expensive. So they will have to run this factory day and night, 3 shifts, and they have already started this shift work. They have no idea how they will get all these people to Los Alamos. The last plan I heard involved 50 or 60 Greyhound buses that would be picking up people all over. They need to bring 2,000 or 3,000 people to the lab every day. The road system won't hold it. And anyway, I don't know if I'm over my time or not.
No, not at all. But I'm just thinking, as someone who attended the 23rd atomic bomb disaster conference in Japan in 1968, got a chance to tour and see the destruction firsthand. This is the kind of stuff that I lose sleep over because the destruction then pales by comparison to the potential destruction for the class of nuclear weaponry that's being developed today. That's the first thing. But the other thing is, there's a violation of an international treaty, I think, here, and the hypocrisy that this country engages in when it comes to, the leaning on Iran, for example, the fact that nobody talks about the realities of Israel having nuclear weapons, or what is going on in India and what's going on in Pakistan and their nuclear weaponry, and the threats that all of this poses to humanity in in its entirety. It's just, it makes me lose sleep, Greg.
Yes. Well, that shows that you're thinking and you're sane. And we all do lose sleep over this. Right now, voices on the left and on the right in this country are realizing that we are goading the bear over there in Ukraine.
Yeah.
And I would like to make a plea for a new kind, an additional kind of diversity in our peace work that brings a tolerance to people we might not, and I'm sure that you have this every day, you work on this, people that we might not agree with on some issues, but they see the growing authoritarianism, they see the needless militarism. Some of these people are on the political right. And it's important for us to cross some of those bridges. Some of them may be truckers in Canada.
Yeah.
And
right,
they're
right.
standing up right now.
Yeah.
And sometimes we're not going to, our country's in a lot of trouble. We may not get the movement that we want. We may need to bring our voice of nonviolence and justice into the movements that we have. And we find this difficult. I think probably most of us do. Mm-hmm. And we're all just struggling with this a situation in this country that certainly I've never seen in my lifetime. I think we're in a situation now which is as bad or worse than the Vietnam War, and I'm not sure that the depth of it is fully understood by many people.
We've got about a minute left.
Yes.
And what I like to do when we have this kind of revelation shared with us is, give us some marching orders.
Sure. Boy, that sounds fun. The nuclear weapons managers, I go generally to the conferences of nuclear weapons managers, which they let me in sometimes.
Great.
Yeah, there was one that ended today, but I wasn't there. They're terrified that they won't be able to find willing people who want to put their hands in a glove box and work with highly toxic radioactive materials all day. And they're having trouble hiring nationwide as well as at Los Alamos. Everyone can get involved in blowing up their jobs pipeline, as they call it, and which has there are mouths of this pipeline here at UNM, at Northern New Mexico Community College, in our high schools, and we need to be willing to, we can't let our young people be exposed to what will look to them like opportunity without a conversation with them. And it's possible those conversations may sleep in their minds and their hearts for quite a while. But I think that that is an important place, and the indication of it is what a tremendous priority is being made within the nuclear weapons establishment on recruitment of young people.
Greg Mello, Los Alamos Study Group, thank you for coming on that Saturday show.
Thank you very much, Jim.
We deeply appreciate this.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're watching That Saturday Show, and today we are honored to have with us Mr. Kenneth Myers, who is a retired Marine Corps officer who moved from being a maker of war to a seeker of peace, and I like that, Ken. I really do. He is currently a board member, a national board member of Veterans for Peace, and continues to be, a frontline activist. And I couldn't think of a better time or a more important time to have you out there, leading the charge, Ken. So welcome to That Saturday Show.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here with you, Jim.
Glad to have you too. So one of the things I thought we'd lead off with, Ken, is I know that the president does a report annually on the nuclear posture in the country, what's out there, what's being built, what's being eliminated, et cetera, and so forth. And this is a pretty dire time, and we'll get into that as well. But I'm so happy that Veterans for Peace has preempted him and gotten ahead of this game that Joe Biden is playing, and issued its own nuclear posture review. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Be very happy to. Yes, every administration, when it comes into office, since the Clinton came into office in the early 90s, has issued a nuclear posture review, which is a declaratory statement of where we think our nuclear efforts are going to be expended over the next 10 years or so. And each time they kind of make some lip service towards reducing the dependence on nuclear weapons, but then in practice, they actually continue to build them bigger and stronger and so forth. Now, Biden's nuclear posture review is expected any week now, but Veterans for Peace decided that our nuclear posture as a nation is so tilted towards war that we should preempt the process and issue our own nuclear posture review. And this would be one really more suited to today's needs. I mean, what we need now is a nuclear posture that enables us to reduce the risk of nuclear confrontation through accidental launch or miscalculated escalation, and to greatly accelerate a global reduction and rapid elimination of nuclear weapons. We're pretty sure that's not what Biden's nuclear posture review is going to do. So we've come up with our own proposals for what should be included in a nuclear posture review. And we've come up with actually a total of 16 proposals. And they're grouped in 3 categories. One is a set of unilateral immediate posture changes we could take without negotiation to reduce the danger of unintended nuclear exchange. And an example of that, the first one, is to announce and implement a no first use and no launch on warning policy, and to make that real by separating warheads from the delivery system so that an instant or knee-jerk launch of missiles becomes much less likely, and that terrifically reduce the risks. The second set of measures that we're proposing are negotiations for nuclear disarmament to make up for some of the missed opportunities we've had in the past and the treaties we've canceled or walked away from. And the third set would be an implementation of treaty obligations. These are far-reaching implementation, which would include creating adequate funding to clean up uranium mines and mills and nuclear production and testing facilities, and the damage we've done to the environment generally. So as you can see, this is a broad range of proposals that are included in our nuclear posture review, and they are items which would greatly enhance the possibilities of peace within our lifetimes.
That's important for us to know. So my question would be, how widely distributed is the review?
Well, we just published it about 2 weeks ago, and we've distributed it mainly at this point. It's been distributed within the choir, you might say. We've gotten quite a few radio interviews and Pacifica the Pacifica media system, has picked it up, and Amy Goodman mentioned it on her Democracy Now! Program as a news item. We're still trying to break into the mainstream media, but we're also going to be distributing to all members of Congress and the key relevant staff, support people in Congress, as well as, of course, we'll be sending it to the White House and various offices in the Pentagon. So, we appreciate every opportunity to talk about it, and if people have a pencil and want to take a look at it, they can jot down this website, which is tinyurl.com/VFP-NPR.
Good.
It's a 10-page report plus 1 page of documentation of the sources that we draw on throughout the report.
I'm going to see that we get that up on the screen as well. All right.
Great.
Because I think it's, the more people know about it, certainly the better. One of the things that and correct me if I'm wrong, but this country signed an international treaty on nuclear weapons several years ago. And now I understand that Los Alamos, which is right here in our own backyard, is being retrofitted to create a whole new class of nuclear weapons. Is my information correct?
That's correct. In 1970, we signed the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Agreement, also called the NPT, the Treaty on Nuclear Proliferation. We signed it. The senator never, confirmed it, but we are signatories to it, as are the other 5 major nuclear powers, as France, Russia, China, and the United States. Who did I leave out? United Kingdom. United Kingdom, yeah. Those have all signed it, and we're all in abrogation of it, with the U.S. and Russia being the major offenders, because that treaty specifically calls on the nuclear powers to move towards the rapid reduction and elimination of nuclear weapons. It calls on the nuclear powers to make good faith efforts. That simply hasn't happened. We continue to build and expand our nuclear capabilities, as do the other nuclear powers. And so we're all lawbreakers, in effect.
Right. So I commented a couple of weeks ago on our show, the hypocrisy, of this country, as it is not only ignoring a treaty that it is a signator to, but continuing to scream and holler about Iran and about North Korea and their nuclear testing and their building of nuclear capabilities, when the United States should actually be trying to set an example, adhering to the treaty, you would think.
That's true. I mean, we are masters of hypocrisy.
Yes.
And ironically, both China and Russia have really made major proposals to start negotiations on new treaties, not only on nuclear weapons, but also on weapons in space, also on cyber warfare. And we have so far refused to join in such negotiations, so that America really is the imperial power, the bully on the block. And I think most Americans, frankly, don't know it and don't want to know it. And so it's breaking the sound barrier on this issue. It's terribly important.
That's pretty sad. That's pretty sad.
And of course, we've also we've also backed out of treaties that were very important to a strategic balance. We backed out of the anti-ballistic missile treaty. We backed out of the, there was a strategic operations treaty, also called the Treaty of Moscow, that we let expire. The INF Treaty, a treaty on intermediate nuclear weapons. We terminated that in 2019 under Trump. The ABM Treaty was one that Bush backed out of in 2002. We let START 1 expire in 2009. Fortunately, the new START has now been extended through 2026. That's the only advance in the treaty stage, in the last 20 years or so.
So I know that when we start talking about countries that have nuclear capabilities and nuclear weapons, we often drop out of that discussion Pakistan, India, Israel, as other countries that have nuclear weapons. Where are they in discussions?
Well, Pakistan and India each have roughly 150 nuclear weapons. Israel is believed to have 200 or so, and of course, they don't admit to having nuclear weapons at all, but it's a pretty open secret.
Right.
And my feeling is that if the United States were to take a genuine lead in the reduction of nuclear weapons, other nations would follow. And so that I think it's terribly important that we get on the right track and take a leadership position. And the fact that we're moving in the other direction has a direct impact here in New Mexico, because Los Alamos National Laboratories is being called on to build up its capability for the production of the nuclear triggers known as PITs, and build up to being able to do 80 of those a year over the next several years. So that right here, Los Alamos Laboratories is expanding. You may know that they have now leased about 200,000 square feet of space in Santa Fe, because they aren't able to house all of the workers, or actually put all the workers behind desks and lab benches at Los Alamos. And so we've moved our local protest, which, Veterans for Peace has been protesting war every Friday since the first Friday and the first Friday of August in 2002. And so we are now in our 20th year of weekly protests, which used to be at the corner of Cerrillos and St. Francis. But because the Los Alamos Labs leased space near the corner of Guadalupe and Alameda, we moved our protest there in conjunction with Concerned Citizens for Nuclear Safety and Nuke Watch New Mexico. So every Friday now we have, usually 14 to 16 people on the four corners of that intersection adjacent to the new Los Alamos National Labs offices, and trying to alert people to what's going on here.
I'm glad you shared that, because I wanted to end with an invitation to our viewers and even those who might even miss the show. We'll put the word out that these protests continue. And one of these Fridays, I'm just going to have to jump in the car and come up and join you guys. Because
that would be great.
Important.
We'd love to see you up here.
Let me put a car caravan together. What time do you usually start on Fridays?
Start at noon. Go noon to 1 every Friday.
Noon to 1 every Friday on the corners of Guadalupe and
Alameda.
In Santa Fe. We're going to have to do that. Ken Myers, retired Marine officer who moved from maker of war to seeker of peace. It's been an honor to have you on, and we're going to have you back for an update.
It's been a great pleasure, Jim, and keep up the great work at the Peace and Justice Center.
Thanks so much, Ken. We appreciate you.
George Edwin Taylor. There have been several African Americans throughout history who have run for president of the United States. Barack Obama being the only one to win his election, not once but twice. Let's not lose sight of that. But Taylor was the first. George Edwin Taylor was born on August 4th, 1857. August 4th is also Barack Obama's birthday. He was born to Amanda Hines and Nathan Taylor in Little Rock, Arkansas. His mother moved with him to Alton, Illinois, a Union town located on the Mississippi River and a waypoint on the Underground Railroad. After the passing of Arkansas's Free Negro Expulsion Act of 1859, which required all blacks to leave the state or risk being captured and forced into servitude, Taylor was orphaned when his mother died from tuberculosis a few years later. He traveled on to La Crosse, Wisconsin, where he was adopted by several families. He attended Wayland University in Beaver Dam, Wisconsin, where he studied English, grammar, debate, and rhetoric. His strong writing and speaking talent earned him positions as a journalist and an editor at numerous newspapers and journals. These positions led to his involvement in politics in the labor movement. Taylor relocated to Iowa in 1891, where he delved even deeper into politics, first as a Republican, and that was back in the days when the Republicans were the good guys, and then as a Democrat. Despite facing criticism because of his race, Taylor made bold moves into political organizing, championing the labor movement and advocating for racial unity as opposed to party unity. He used the publications he owned, the Wisconsin Labor Advocate and the Negro Solicitor, to disseminate his political messages. Now get this, in 1904, Taylor joined the National Liberty Party, the first national party created by and for, guess who? African Americans, and was nominated to run for President of the United States as their candidate. Though he didn't win, his campaign opened the door for many future black candidates. George Edwin Taylor. I'm talking with my newfound friends here, my new power couple. That's what I call them. When a couple is working together to make things happen, that's power all by itself. We're talking with Brian and Brennan Bowman. Brenn Bowman is a photographer and has a studio here called Brenn B. Bowman, right?
Brenn B. Photography.
Brenn B. Photography.
Yes, yes.
And her husband turns out sumptuous, mouth-watering meals through his catering service, Chef BB. Right. And we've got them both here today to talk to us on That Saturday Show. Welcome, Brian and Brenn.
Thank you.
Thank you so much
Glad
for
to have
having
you
us.
here.
Thank you.
So, how long have you all been doing what you've been doing?
So we got into our businesses and kind of really got things rolling, I would say, in the last 3 to 5 years. Mm-hmm. And in moving here, we're from Virginia, just moved here recently. That has really helped us to really focus our efforts into our businesses, and her opening the studio and really trying to go all in on our businesses, both individually and then obviously together whenever possible.
That's great. You're laughing, Brenn.
Yeah, I always let him go first, so I want to see what story he's going to tell. But no, so I have been doing photography since about 2013. He bought me my first camera, And yeah, and really he's right about that. We've been really taking it seriously the past 3 to 5 years. We've really kind of gone all in on our businesses. So yeah, that's how long we've been doing this thing.
So now you've been in Albuquerque a little less than 2 years.
Yes.
And just tell me, what have you found here? What's the response been like to your business efforts?
It's been good. It's been good. Even though we moved and kind of had to start over with our clientele, the people have been receptive. Spread word of mouth about our businesses and about our services, and we've really been able to make some good connections, in our businesses with the community and people we meet through doing business.
That's great. That's great.
So I will say, in addition to that, because we run our businesses like all of our clients essentially kind of become family.
Oh yeah.
That really, really helps with the word of mouth, because people like really are drawn to how we interact with them and how we, just really are. A lot of times we're together. So, just our energy. A lot of people are really drawn to that. So it's been pretty good. It's been really good, actually.
Well, there are two things that are guaranteed to get people's attention. One is good food, and the other is the opportunity to look at themselves.
True, yes.
And so you've covered two of the most important bases, in our lives here. Yes. You really have, yeah. So, Brenn, do you have any specialties that you really lead with when you're putting that good food out there?
The funny thing is, people ask me this all the time, like, what's my specialty or what am I well known for, things like that. And really, it's just whatever people want. It's just whatever people want, and I think there's value in versatility. Mm-hmm. If I can only do one thing well, that's only going to get me so far. Whereas, especially going to culinary school and taking the training and being trained in various cuisines, allows me to do multiple things well, to where whatever anyone wants, I'm able to give them that experience.
So what got you interested in food?
So I've always been, had a passion for food from a very young age, whether it was, the big Sunday dinners or, growing up, my dad and I and my brother would go fishing like before Sunday school on Sundays before church. And then we'd come home and clean up the fish and have a nice fish fry for dinner. Being at my grandmother's house and always being in the kitchen with her when she's preparing food. And then you look at a lot of people's memories, a lot of them surround food. Food is the backdrop for a lot of good memories and a lot of experiences. And it's a way to preserve, culture. And it's a way to appreciate another culture is through their food.
Absolutely. All right, Brenn, I'm going to come to you about photography now. I know that Brian brought you your first camera, but I know you've had some interest long before then, and you probably just kept talking about it, and he said, here's a camera. Go out there and shoot.
That's exactly what happened. No, so as long as I can remember, and I really have sat and thought about this, I have always had cameras. Like, I've always had, like, the Fujifilm camera. I've had the Polaroids when they were big. From the original Polaroid to the round, big, colorful. Like, I've always had cameras. And now that I am older, and both of my parents and all of my grandparents are now deceased, that is what I have. I have those heirlooms. I have those pictures that I can now go back and show my children. Like, this was great grandma. This was, granddaddy, or this, show them the pictures that I took from when I was a child. So for me, I enjoy being able to give families that. An opportunity to have an heirloom to pass down from generation to generation. I absolutely love. I was telling my daughter that last week I did a wedding, and I ordered the bride and groom a surprise canvas. And I showed it to my daughter today, and my daughter's 15, and she was like, oh my gosh, that's absolutely beautiful. And that is what I want. Now they have this heirloom from the day that they were married, and they can show their children to come what, this image of this amazing day. And I love it. I love to be able to give women, families, people of color that, because that's my focus is people of color, because generally we've not had the amazing images to pass down from generation to generation. We don't have those things. We have stories, but we have no face to put with the story. So now I give them a face to put to their amazing story to tell their children from years to come.
It's so interesting that you would say that because, I guess I've been fortunate in that respect that I've got photographs. My home office, in fact, every wall is covered with photographs from family and from even extended family, if you will. As far back as 1846, when I had a picture reproduced from a tintype. Wow. And so one of the things that I do with my family is once a month I pull out a photograph and I do a Zoom recording and I tell the story to my entire family about that particular photograph. Wow. Who's in it, what it meant, just really fascinating stuff. And that's what I've been sharing, with all of my brothers and sisters and nieces and nephews and, cousins, because I'm the reigning patriarch of the family now. Okay. And it's you're so right about heirlooms and how, you capture so much history that way. And that just lives on. Yeah. It lives on. It really does. So, Brian, what are your plans? You got any projections for how you're going to keep advancing Chef BB?
Well, hopefully I can keep providing, my clients with an experience that they didn't even know was an option for them. Something I hear all the time is people will joke and they'll say, well, hey, if I hit the lottery, one of the first things I would do is hire a chef. Because they think it's only for the rich and famous to have someone come into their home and cook them a gourmet meal. But that's something I want to make accessible to more people for that experience. Have the family be able to get together and enjoy each other's company. And just for myself to be a part, even if it's just a very small part in providing the food for those memories that they're going to have for the rest of their life.
And Brenn, what are your plans for moving that photography business forward?
So I am working on right now a mentorship program for children in maybe I think 5th grade through middle school who are interested in photography. So I want to provide them a place. They would come to my studio, FaithWorks Studio, and they would learn. Like I would teach them, the editing process. I would teach them the photography process, the lighting, all of the things that go into photography, because there are generations of photographers behind me, and I've come from a long line of educators. I'm at heart an educator, and I want to pass it on. So that's what I'm working on right now. I'm still going to, take my pictures, but I want to be able to pass what I know on to the next generation.
Brian Bowman, Brennan Bowman, my power couple for the month. Thank you ever so much. And we're going to have you back. In fact, I want to get some food in the studio.
Absolutely.
Okay?
We love to eat.
Yes. Thanks so much for being on that Saturday.
Thank you for having us.
All right. Now, let's go back to the studio.
Until the next time, it's time to say goodbye. When you out here in the streets, keep it real, 505. We love everybody, we just want to let you know. Thanks for tuning in to that Saturday show.